It was a day unlike any other, a day that would forever change the course of history. The air felt thicker, as though even the atmosphere had sensed the magnitude of the moment. The ground beneath our feet, though familiar, seemed foreign, as if the planet itself had grown weary of our presence, tired of our arrogance. We, the beings from another world, had arrived with hopes of peace, promises of sharing knowledge and resources that would elevate this fledgling civilization. We watched from our ships, high above the Earth's surface, observing the bustling lives of humans below. They were small, fragile creatures, at least that was our initial perception. They fought wars, caused environmental destruction, and had the audacity to think they were masters of their domain. But they had something we didn't fully understand, something we hadn't anticipated. They had resolve, adaptability, and a spirit that couldn't be broken. When we first arrived, we believed we would be welcomed as saviors. The humans, overwhelmed by their struggles, would see us as their benefactors, eager to accept our help. Our technology was far beyond their wildest dreams, our knowledge vast and boundless, ready to be shared with them. And yet, in those early encounters, we underestimated them. The leaders of this planet were not so easily swayed. They viewed us with a mix of awe, fear, and suspicion. They listened to our words, studied our gestures, and weighed our offers, but beneath their seemingly respectful behavior lay a simmering tension. We could not discern whether it was pride, fear, or something else entirely, but there was a reluctance, a resistance. It grew with each passing day, building as our presence became more pronounced. We had underestimated their resilience. The humans did not kneel to us as we thought they might. Instead, they rallied. They gathered in secret, they organized, and they devised strategies. Their scientists, some already brilliant in their own right, began to reverse engineer the technology we had offered them. What had once been a gift of knowledge soon became the seeds of something else, something they could control. We were no longer the benevolent aliens offering salvation. We had become the object of study, the enigma they were determined to crack. It was in those early months that we began to realize the truth. The humans, despite their primitive tendencies, possessed an unshakable drive to survive. They were not as helpless as we had first believed. They adapted faster than we could have imagined. They fought back. Not with advanced weapons, they did not have the technology to match us in that regard, but with something much more dangerous, their ingenuity. We had made the mistake of thinking that their technology was inferior. They may not have had spacecraft as advanced as ours, but they had minds that were hungry, restless, and capable of far more than we could fathom. They took what we gave them and twisted it, turned it into something of their own creation. They saw opportunity where we saw only threats. And that's when the power struggle began. We had made our first miscalculation when we underestimated their ability to rally, but the next mistake was underestimating their capacity for adaptation. They built defenses. They studied our weaknesses, not just our technology but our very culture. We had expected their societies to crumble in the face of superior power, but instead, they united. They found solidarity in their fear, their pride, and their shared humanity. This unity gave them strength, and their adaptability made them a force to be reckoned with. The first sign of true resistance came when they intercepted one of our transmissions, a communication from our central command. They decoded it, learned from it, and responded in kind, sending their own message into the void. It was a declaration, not of war, but of defiance, a statement that they would not bow to us. We thought it was an isolated event, a mere bluff. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of their resistance. For weeks, we watched, uncertain of how to respond. Our commanders were divided. Some believed that we should strike decisively, showing them the power of our fleet. Others suggested that we continue to offer peace, to give them time to accept their fate. But the humans were already beyond the point of negotiation. Their governments, once fractured and divided, began to work together, united by a singular goal, to protect their planet from the alien threat. We watched in awe as they started to build their own weapons, weapons that were crude compared to our technology but effective in their own right. They didn't possess our advanced energy sources or propulsion systems, but they were resourceful. They learned quickly, innovating at a pace we couldn't match. What had been a series of scattered skirmishes soon turned into a full-scale conflict. It was a war of attrition, and we began to understand something fundamental. The humans might not have the advanced weapons or the vast fleets we commanded, but they had something far more valuable. They had resolve. The war dragged on for months, and the casualties on both sides mounted. We fought with our superior technology, striking from the skies, deploying weapons that could decimate entire cities in an instant. Yet, for every blow we struck, the humans came back with new tactics, new strategies. They learned from their defeats and adapted. It was this relentless determination that wore us down. In the midst of the conflict, there were moments of clarity, moments when I could see the toll the war was taking not just on our side, but on theirs as well. I could see the humanity in them, the vulnerability, the desperation, and yet the unwavering determination in their eyes. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater, for their homes, for their families, for their very way of life. And slowly, as the months stretched into a year, we began to question our place in this conflict. What had begun as an invasion, a mission of conquest, became something far more complicated. We were no longer the invincible force we had once been. Our losses mounted. Our forces, though technologically superior, were stretched thin. The humans, though struggling, were not retreating. They were adapting, evolving, and their unity grew stronger with each passing day. Then came the turning point. It was during one of the fiercest battles, when the skies above Earth were filled with the wreckage of our ships and the roar of human resistance, that something changed. It wasn't a weapon, or a strategy, or a particular piece of technology. It was something far simpler: communication. For the first time, we spoke not as invaders, but as equals. It was a message, sent through the very same channels that had once been used for war. It was a plea, an acknowledgement that the cycle of violence could not continue. Our leaders reached out to theirs, and for the first time, the humans responded not with hatred, but with the same request: an end to the fighting, a chance for peace. It wasn't easy. The mistrust was deep, and the scars of battle were still fresh. But there was something undeniable in that moment: we had reached an understanding. We were no longer conquerors and conquered, but two civilizations, both flawed, both seeking something greater than war. It was in that moment, on that fateful day, that we made our decision to surrender. Not to the humans, in the traditional sense of the word, but to the idea that we could not impose our will upon them. We had come to Earth with the expectation that we could reshape it, mold it to our vision. But in the end, it was the humans who had shown us the true meaning of resilience, of growth, of adaptation. We had surrendered not to their might, but to their spirit. As we descended from the skies, the battle-weary ships and broken technologies fading into the background, we did not see the humans as enemies anymore. We saw them as equals. And as we stepped onto their soil, our once imposing forms now humbled, we realized that the true lesson of the day was not one of dominance, but of shared understanding. In surrendering, we had found the key to peace not through victory, but through humility. And so, the day we surrendered to the humans became the day we learned to live alongside them, not above them. A new chapter began, one where both our species could grow, learn, and rebuild together. As we stood on the Earth's surface, the weight of our surrender pressed heavily upon us. It was no longer the triumph we had imagined, no longer the conquest of a new world. Instead, it was an uneasy recognition that the humans had, in their own way, defeated us. But they had not done so with weapons or sheer strength alone. No, it was their spirit that had won this war. It was their resolve, their capacity for adaptation, their undying will to survive and thrive. They had reshaped the narrative, and we were left to follow. The moment of peace was not an instantaneous shift in the hearts of our leaders or the humans. It came, rather, through small, tentative steps. At first, the humans were cautious. They observed us as we observed them, analyzing every gesture, every word. Could they trust us? Could they believe that we had truly surrendered? For our part, we had no more weapons to point at them, no fleets to hover over their cities. We were vulnerable, raw, and in many ways, more like them than we had ever imagined. The first few encounters were filled with questions. What did they want from us now? Why had we come? What did we hope to achieve? And, perhaps most importantly, what did they hope to learn from us? Their curiosity was vast, much like our own had been when we first arrived on their planet. But they were not naive in the same way we had been. They understood that knowledge could be a double-edged sword. They wanted to understand our technology, our culture, but they wanted to make sure it was not a trap. Our leaders, too, had to adjust. For years, they had held onto the idea of superiority, of guiding Earth into the next stage of its existence. They had seen themselves as saviors, as the inevitable force that would reshape humanity for the better. Now, standing amidst the humans, they realized how flawed that thinking had been. It was humbling, unsettling even, to face the truth that we, too, had much to learn. There were moments of silence between us, moments where we struggled to find the right words, the right approach. We had given up the power to dictate terms. Now, we needed to listen. We needed to understand. Slowly, the humans began to engage with us not with hostility, but with something that felt almost like cautious hope. They wanted to rebuild, but they were not willing to forget. They would not forgive the years of invasion and destruction so easily. Trust, it seemed, would be earned. In the months that followed, the world underwent a slow but undeniable transformation. The technology we had shared with them was no longer a gift. It had become a tool, something they used in their own way, for their own purposes. And as we shared what we knew reluctantly at first, but then with growing eagerness, so too did we learn from them. The humans showed us something we had never truly understood, the value of resilience. Their cities, once torn apart by the conflict, began to rebuild. The scars remained, but they were not a sign of weakness, they were a testament to their strength. They had been through something unspeakable, something that could have broken them, but instead, they rose from it. They did not bow their heads in defeat, but lifted their eyes to the sky, determined to create something better from the ruins. We watched them rebuild not just their cities, but their societies. It was a process of healing, of growth, of reconciliation. In the midst of it all, we began to understand how little we had truly known about Earth. We had seen it through the lens of superiority, of domination, but what we had missed was the beauty of their diversity, the complexity of their relationships, and the depth of their cultures. The humans did not see themselves as one unified entity, but as a collection of diverse nations, languages, and beliefs. Each society was unique, with its own struggles, dreams, and conflicts. It was not the simple, monolithic world we had imagined. No, it was a beautiful, chaotic mosaic, each piece different, but each essential to the whole. And in that mosaic, we realized there was space for us. We no longer needed to control. We no longer needed to be their rulers. We could be their partners. Not as invaders, not as conquerors, but as equals. There was much we could offer them, but equally, there was much we could learn from them. They had faced challenges we had never encountered, wars we had never fought, struggles that had shaped them into the resilient beings they were. And now, in this strange new alliance, we began to understand that perhaps we had underestimated them not just in battle, but in life itself. As the years passed, the once shattered relationship between our species slowly mended. We exchanged knowledge, not as victors and vanquished, but as two civilizations working together for mutual growth. It was not always easy. There were still moments of tension, moments when old wounds flared up, but they were fewer and farther between. And slowly, humanity began to trust us not because they were forced to, but because they saw that we were no longer the invaders we had once been. It was an evolution, a transformation that had taken years. But the ultimate gift we gave each other was not technology, nor knowledge. It was understanding. We had seen Earth as something to conquer, to control. But the humans had shown us that sometimes, the greatest strength lies in letting go and surrendering not to defeat, but to the possibility of cooperation, of learning, of growing together. In the end, we didn't just survive on Earth. We became a part of its story, its struggle, its triumphs. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. Not that we had been right, not that we had been strong, but that in the end, it was the shared humanity, both our own and theirs, that would carry us forward. As we stood side by side with the humans, watching the first signs of true peace take root, we knew one thing: our time of ruling was over. But in that surrender, we had found something more valuable than we could have ever imagined: a future not of domination, but of coexistence. And as the sun set on that strange, new world, we felt the first real hope that had eluded us for so long. We had not conquered Earth. We had found a way to live with it. And with the humans. Together. The years stretched on, and as the partnership between our species deepened, the world began to look different, more connected, more interwoven. Earth, once ravaged by conflict, began to heal in ways we had never thought possible. We had thought our knowledge of the universe, our advanced technologies, would be the guiding light for humanity. Instead, it was the humans' creativity, resilience, and their capacity to adapt that had shaped this new world. We had come to learn that no technology, no matter how advanced, could replace the quiet strength that humanity had in abundance. The alliance between humans and us, beings who had once been adversaries, became an example for the rest of the galaxy. For the first time in history, we had witnessed a true coming together, a blending of cultures, ideas, and values. The scars of the war were still present, but they no longer defined us. What had once been seen as an invasion had transformed into an opportunity for both our species to learn, grow, and ultimately thrive. We watched as humans, ever restless and ever forward-thinking, took the first steps into space, not just as Earthlings, but as part of a broader, unified galactic community. Together, we explored the stars, seeking knowledge not only about distant planets, but about ourselves. The desire for expansion was no longer driven by conquest, but by the hope of mutual discovery. The vastness of space was no longer something to fear, but something to be understood. We were no longer a species separate from Earth, we had become a part of it. Our technology was integrated into human societies, but so too were the values they had shown us. We had once been focused on efficiency, control, and domination. The humans, however, taught us that sometimes the most important thing was patience, compassion, and connection. As the Earth flourished, so too did our relationship. We began to invest in the future, both in the physical sense, with projects to explore other planets, and in the more abstract sense, by focusing on art, culture, and intellectual exchange. The children born of both species, those who had inherited the best of both our worlds, were now reaching adolescence. They had known no war, no distrust, only a world where boundaries between human and alien had blurred into something new. They were the future, and as we watched them grow, we realized that they would be the ones to lead not just Earth, but any future civilizations we would encounter. There was still work to be done. We knew that the Earth would face challenges, just as we had. The planet wasn't perfect, and neither were its inhabitants. But for the first time in history, we saw hope in humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. It wasn't just the humans who had changed. We, too, had learned to be better, to think differently, to consider not just our survival but our place in a greater community. We had spent millennia traveling the stars, seeking to conquer, to control, to expand. And yet, in surrendering to the humans, we had found something we had never expected: a reason to stay, a reason to build something meaningful, not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings. One evening, as I walked alongside a human friend, someone who had once been an adversary, now a trusted ally, we gazed up at the stars together. The same stars that had once seemed distant and cold, the same ones that had witnessed our arrival on Earth, now felt close, intimate. We no longer looked at the night sky as something we sought to conquer, but as something we sought to understand, to explore, to share. "I wonder," my friend said, his voice soft but thoughtful, "what's out there? What else is out there waiting for us?" I smiled, the question resonating deeply within me. "I wonder, too," I replied. "But now, I think it's not just about finding new worlds. It's about learning to live in the one we've already found together." The silence that followed felt full of possibilities. We didn't need to search the galaxy for meaning, it was here, right in front of us, in the fragile balance of life on Earth and in the relationships we had cultivated, not just with each other, but with the world itself. The humans had shown us that the journey wasn't just about reaching new destinations, but about appreciating the journey itself. As the days turned into years, and then decades, the once strange alliance between our species became a way of life. We lived side by side, each contributing to the betterment of the other. The mistakes of the past no longer defined us. We had transcended the violence, the suspicion, and the fear. In their place was a deep respect, one earned not just through cooperation, but through shared struggle, growth, and the constant pursuit of understanding. And when the time came to venture further into the stars, to leave behind the only home we had known, we did so not as conquerors or invaders, but as ambassadors of a new age, an age of collaboration, unity, and exploration. The lessons of Earth, and of humanity, would guide us as we carried their legacy into the universe. We had once thought that surrendering meant weakness. But in surrendering, we had found strength beyond measure. Not in the power we had once sought, but in the relationships we had built, the bonds we had formed, and the shared commitment to a future where both our species could flourish. And so, the day we surrendered to the humans wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of something far greater, a journey into the unknown, not as conquerors, but as partners, ready to face whatever the universe had to offer, together. As the years flowed forward, and the stars beckoned us outward, we had truly become part of Earth, woven into its fabric, its pulse beating in sync with ours. The world that we had once viewed from above, with an air of superiority, was now a place of connection, discovery, and shared destiny. It was no longer just a planet to conquer or inhabit, it was home. The humans, who had once looked upon us with fear and suspicion, had now become our closest companions in the cosmos. Together, we explored the depths of space, ventured into distant systems, and unraveled the mysteries that had once seemed too vast, too unknowable. But as we journeyed farther from Earth, we began to realize something. The farther we went, the more we understood how much there was left to learn. The stars, though vast and beautiful, had their own mysteries, just as Earth had. And we knew, with an almost reverent certainty, that no matter how far we traveled, there would always be something more to discover, whether in the distant galaxies, or in the hearts of the people we had come to call our own. At first, the space expeditions were cautious. We were explorers, yes, but we were still learning how to work together in this shared universe. The ships we had once used to invade now became vessels for exploration, tools of discovery. Their design was refined over time, with the contributions of both our people, human and alien, melding together into something entirely new. We called them voyagers, symbols of our joint efforts to understand the universe and each other. The planets we visited were as diverse as Earth itself, some barren and silent, others teeming with life. Each new world brought its own challenges, and the complexity of dealing with the unknown became a reminder that we were never alone in the cosmos. But in these vast expanses, we found not only knowledge but also the deep, humbling truth that life, no matter its form, is fragile. And just as we had once nearly destroyed Earth with our pride and ambition, so too could we harm any world we touched if we weren't careful. One of the most significant discoveries came on a planet at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, a world with no intelligent life, but rich with plant and animal organisms. It was here that we encountered our first real challenge as a collective species. The planet's ecosystem was delicate, its balance easily disrupted by the smallest of actions. We were reminded of Earth, the world we had once ravaged, and it became painfully clear that we had to tread lightly, even in the uninhabited corners of the universe. The human perspective was invaluable during this time. While we had the technology and knowledge to interact with alien ecosystems, it was the humans who showed us how to respect and care for them, how to observe without interfering. The gentle care they took with the planet reminded us of the lessons we had learned from them on Earth. In the pursuit of knowledge, we had to remember that wisdom came not just from knowing, but from understanding the consequences of our actions. And yet, It was on this planet that we made our greatest breakthrough, a discovery that would change the course of not just our species, but all intelligent life we might encounter in the future. It was a simple plant, a seemingly insignificant species that had evolved in isolation for millennia. But when we studied it closely, we found that it had properties far beyond what we could have imagined. A plant that could purify water and soil, absorb toxins from the air, and even enhance the healing properties of living organisms. We took samples back to Earth, and soon, humanity began to use the plant to heal the last lingering environmental scars on their planet. It was a gift and offering from the stars, one we had discovered together. That discovery solidified the sense that we were not just observers in the vastness of space, but participants, co-creators with the universe, learning to live in balance with it. But even as we continued our explorations and shared our knowledge, something lingered in the back of our minds, a quiet understanding that the peace we had found, the unity we had achieved, was fragile. The universe was vast, and in the deep silence of space, we knew that we were not the only ones out there. There were others, other civilizations, other species, perhaps even others who had once faced the temptation to conquer rather than collaborate. And so, we did not let our guard down entirely. As we ventured further, we kept a vigilant eye, not only on the stars, but on each other. The history of conflict was never far from our thoughts. It was why, even as we celebrated our shared achievements, we made sure that our alliance, the partnership between humans and us, remained grounded in the values we had learned on Earth: humility, respect, and understanding. Yet there was something else, something more profound that we began to realize with each passing day. The true strength of our alliance lay not in our technology, not in the vastness of our knowledge, but in our shared experiences. We had lived through war together. We had fought, not just against each other, but for the future we hoped to build. The memories of those early days, the days of resistance, of surrender, were woven into the very fabric of our relationship. They had shaped us in ways we couldn't always articulate. And perhaps that was the greatest testament to the power of cooperation, that despite all we had lost, we had gained something far greater, a bond that no force in the universe could break. And yet, with all our progress, there was a question that lingered in the air, one that neither we nor the humans had fully answered. What did it mean to be a part of something larger than ourselves? What was the ultimate purpose of our alliance, our discoveries, our explorations? The answer, we came to realize, was not a destination, but a journey, a shared journey where the greatest discoveries were not always made in the farthest reaches of space, but in the quiet moments spent with each other, in the connections we formed, and in the understanding we shared. The universe was full of wonders, but the true wonder was that we humans and aliens had found a way to live together, to coexist, to face the unknown side by side. And so, as the Voyagers continued to explore the stars, as we built a future in the vastness of the cosmos, we did so not as conquerors, but as collaborators, pilgrims on a journey of discovery, ever forward, ever together. The lessons of Earth, and of our surrender to the humans, would continue to guide us, no matter where the stars led. For the greatest discovery was not in finding new worlds, but in realizing that together, we could create a future unlike any we had ever imagined. And that was a journey worth taking. As our journey into the stars continued, the excitement of exploration was tempered by the realization that the universe, while vast and full of promise, was also filled with uncertainty. Each new world we encountered was a reminder of how much we didn't know, not just about distant planets, but about ourselves. We had surrendered to the humans, yes, but in doing so, we had unknowingly surrendered to the greater potential of what could be achieved when we set aside our differences and worked toward a common goal. The Voyagers had become more than just vessels of exploration, they were symbols of our unity. And yet, despite the grand progress we had made, there was a lingering awareness that the universe was a place where new challenges could arise from anywhere, at any time. The peace we had fought for on Earth, the trust we had painstakingly built, could easily be shattered. The universe was indifferent to our struggles. We had to remain vigilant. In time, the Voyagers became home. As they traversed the cosmos, they carried the stories of humanity and our own species with them. We were no longer just two races traveling together. We had become something more, an example of what could be achieved when two civilizations, once at odds, chose to walk the same path. Our children, those born of both humans and us, grew up with a deep understanding that the future was not set in stone. It would be shaped by the choices we made, by the relationships we built. There was one mission, however, that stood out above all others. It was a mission that would test the very core of what we had come to learn about ourselves and each other. Deep in a distant corner of the galaxy, we received a distress signal, a signal from a dying world. The planet was one we had never heard of, far from any known trade routes, and the inhabitants were unknown to us. It was a call for help. When we arrived, what we found was not an alien civilization, but a lone survivor, one being who had managed to survive the planet's collapse. Her name was Alara, a being whose species had long since been wiped out by natural catastrophes and wars of their own making. She was the last of her kind. And yet, there was something in her eyes, a fire, a resilience that reminded us of what it meant to survive against all odds. Alara's world had faced similar challenges to Earth's, but where we had found a way to change, her people had not. Their civilizations had once been advanced, but they had lost their way, consumed by their own pride and greed. As we spoke with her, we learned that her people's downfall was not caused by an external force, but by their inability to work together. They had divided themselves into factions, each believing their way was the only right way. In the end, they had fought each other to the brink of extinction. Alara's story was a tragic reflection of what we had once been. And as she told it, we realized that while our past had been one of violence and conquest, we had been given a rare opportunity to change, an opportunity that her people had never had. The lessons we had learned on Earth were invaluable, but they had also become the foundation of something greater. We weren't just saving Earth anymore. We were saving the very idea of coexistence. After much deliberation, we made the decision to bring Alara back with us to Earth. We knew it would be a difficult journey, not just for her, but for us. Could we truly teach her people's lessons to a survivor so deeply scarred by the fall of her world? And could we ensure that the mistakes of her species didn't find their way into our own hearts? As Alara settled on Earth, it was clear that the process would be difficult. Her grief was palpable, her struggle to connect with the humans who had offered her sanctuary was intense. She was a living reminder of what we had narrowly avoided and what we still had to be vigilant against. But she was also a testament to the resilience of life. She had survived against the odds, and in her, we saw a glimmer of hope for the future. She was not the last of her kind. She was the beginning of something new. Her arrival brought a profound shift in our perspective. We realized that the lessons we had learned about respect, humility, cooperation weren't just lessons for our species. They were lessons for all sentient beings, for all civilizations that would rise, fall, and eventually find their way. Alara's people had been destroyed not by external enemies, but by their own inability to see past their differences, by their refusal to come together. And so, we made a vow, both humans and aliens, that we would carry these lessons forward, not just in our relationship with each other, but in how we approached every new encounter, every new world, and every new species we encountered. There would be no more domination, no more invasion. There would be only understanding, only shared growth, and only the pursuit of knowledge, not for the sake of power, but for the sake of life itself. Years passed, and Alara's presence on Earth became a symbol of what was possible. Slowly, she began to heal, to teach, and to share the story of her people, not as a warning, but as a guide. She had once believed that her species was doomed, that they had no future. But here, on Earth, among humans and aliens alike, she saw a new possibility, a future where we could learn from the mistakes of the past, a future where peace was not a fleeting dream, but a living, breathing reality. And so, the voyagers continued their journey, as did the humans and us, ever forward, ever together. We had once believed that our story would be one of conquest and survival. But now, we saw that the true story was one of reconciliation, of shared wisdom, of healing. We were no longer just explorers of the stars. We were the caretakers of a new world, a new future. The journey ahead would not be easy, but we knew that as long as we remained united, there was no challenge we could not face. The universe was vast, but it had become, for us, a place where we could build something more than just colonies or empires. We could build connections that spanned the stars and bridge the gaps between species. The lessons of Earth and the lessons of Alara's people would guide us forward as we ventured into the unknown, side by side. For the greatest discovery, we realized, was not in the stars themselves, but in the potential of what we could become when we chose to work together. And that journey, our journey, had only just begun.